This past weekend we had Impact Wrestling presenting Turning Point on the Impact Plus streaming service. Now it was a very newsworthy show actually. I mentioned previously on a video that is gone up on the channel today. If you haven't checked it out, be sure to. There'll be a link in the description box below. There'll be a card that pops up on the screen sometime in this video, so be sure to check that out because it was a very newsworthy event about title changes. There were several title changes, two in fact, that took place during Turning Point, so be sure to check out that video. But what I want to talk about in this video is some of the surprises and announcements that were made during Turning Point this past weekend. Now, of course, as I mentioned, Turning Point took place on Saturday night on Impact Plus. It was at Skyway Studios in Nashville, Tennessee, as this is the place where Impact Wrestling holds all of their television tapings at the moment, especially during the pandemic. I don't think it was live. I think it was taped. I've seen a couple of reactions from talents over the last couple of days talking about how, I think Deonna Purrazzo, even today, they've got their eBay store, Impact Wrestling, and they're selling a cookie sheet from the match against Su Yung. And it was a cookie sheet that Deonna Purrazzo said, oh, this bruised my elbow for a week. So it looks like it was possibly in the can for about a week or so. So I don't think it was live. But we saw a lot of interesting and newsworthy events happen during Turning Point this past weekend. And as I mentioned earlier on in the previous video, this is really important when it comes to Impact Wrestling. Why are they having these newsworthy things happen during a show on Impact Plus as opposed to pay-per-view? It's because Impact needs to show and convince the casual fan and the hardcore fans, quite frankly, that these shows are noteworthy. Things can happen, big things can happen on this show, and that's exactly what Impact achieves with Turning Point, with the multiple title changes and with a surprise return or debut, depending how you look at it. And in addition to that, an announcement when it comes to the Impact Wrestling Knockouts Tag Team Championship. So, by doing all of this, they are showing fans that it is worth the money. If you subscribe to Impact Plus, not only do you get obviously the back catalogue, the library of the past TNA Impacts from back in the day, the NWA TNA pay-per-views, previous Impact Wrestling and TNA pay-per-views, and obviously past episodes of Impact on Access TV and past pay-per-views that Impact Wrestling have done. But in addition to that, you also get up-to-date current stuff like these Impact Plus exclusive events like Turning Point, like Victory Road, and like Final Resolution next month. They're showing to the fans that it is worth the money, that you should be signed up to this streaming service. So we had a few surprises and major announcements that came out of Saturday's event, and we're going to get into that in this video. The first being, I think the most major surprise was the return of a former TNA star returning at Impact Turning Point on Saturday. Now, following Cousin Jake and Rohit Raju's match at the Impact Turning Point special, former TNA and longtime All Japan Pro Wrestling star Joe Doring made his return to Impact Wrestling. Now, as I just mentioned, Cousin Jake was challenging Raju in his Defeat Rohit challenge for the X Division Championship, and then although Cousin Jake came up short in the match and didn't win the X Division Championship, it was interrupted by former Impact World Champion Eric Young, who came down to the ring after the match and brought the powerhouse Joe Doring with him to take out not just Cousin Jake, but Cody Deaner as well. He took out both the Deaners. Now, some people will be saying, and a bit like myself, I'll be brutally honest, because going back to 2005, was I completely knowledgeable of the TNA product back then, especially in such a short period of time that Joe Doring was there? Some people would say, Joe Doring, I've never heard of him before, how is he returning to Impact? But he was previously a member of the TNA roster all the way back in 2005. Now, during that period of time, he was only there for about a year or so, 2005 to 2006. He mostly wrestled in tag team matches. But from there, he's really gone on to quite serious success over in Japan, especially in All Japan. He became one half of the All Japan Tag Team Champions on 4 separate occasions, as well as holding their Triple Crown Heavyweight Championship in All Japan Pro Wrestling twice. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what role he's going to have to play when it pertains to Eric Young in the future on Impact Wrestling. Now, as I mentioned, let's dive in a little bit to Joe Doring's past when it comes to Impact Wrestling, TNA Wrestling, because I really wasn't massively familiar with his work in TNA. Now, Joe Doring competed in a preview show, ironically, in Turning Point 2005. I think that was the actual debut of Joe Doring in Impact Wrestling, which to me is super... It's just funny how these things work out, isn't it? Just, you never know how these things are going to work out. He makes his TNA debut at Turning Point 2005, 15 years later, at Turning Point once again, he returns to the company at the very same event. It's fascinating, that kind of situation. It's fascinating, that situation. Now, he made his final appearance for Impact TNA during that brief run between 2005 and 2006 on the September 28 edition of Impact, which was taped on September 25 of that year. Doring, under a different name called Vaughn Doring. I don't know why they would have changed it. I'm guessing for copyright purposes or whatever. But he made his final TNA appearance in a tag team match where he and his partner were defeated by Team 3D. And then after that, he went to All Japan Pro Wrestling. Now, in between then, actually, I must stress that he actually did have a very, very brief period in WWE Developmental back when it was FCW. Obviously, that didn't go anywhere. But his major success, Joe Doring, has been in All Japan Pro Wrestling. And he's had about a 10-year spell in that company. As I mentioned previously, he's a 2-time Triple Crown Heavyweight Champion, a former 4-time World Tag Team Champion with 4 different partners. So it's very interesting. And as I mentioned, Impact, by doing this, they're showing that anything can happen at any event, any Impact Wrestling event, regardless if it's on TV, regardless if it's a pay-per-view, regardless if it's an Impact Plus event. They are proving that anything can happen when you purchase one of their events through their variety of revenue streams, and it's exactly the right thing to do. They are showing that even at an Impact Plus event after Bound for Glory, you could see a big event like a superstar, a wrestler, returning to Impact Wrestling that hasn't been with the company in 15 years. If you miss out on any of these events, you miss out on something big. Now, I think when it comes to the re-debut or the return, however you want to look at it, of Joe Doring, I think it makes a lot of sense for him to return at this event. I look at Bound for Glory like Impact Wrestling's WrestleMania. I look at it like it's their Starrcade, and the way that I look at WrestleMania and Starrcade and anything of that nature, those big pay-per-views, the biggest pay-per-view that a company can offer, I look at that like it's the end of a chapter. It's the end of the book, right? Maybe the end of the chapter is the better metaphor or analogy here. But it's the end of the chapter, so the next event, the next TVs, they're the beginning of the new season. They're beginning of the new stable, the new chapter, whatever. And this beginning of the new chapter involves an Eric Young stable. I think that's where we're getting. And quite frankly, if you have to look at Eric Young right now, he needs something to do. He absolutely needs something to do, because I thought briefly he was going to be involved with Sami Callihan and Ken Shamrock. They ended an episode of Impact a couple of weeks ago where it was Callihan and Shamrock standing tall over Rich Swann, along with Eric Young. But it looks like that isn't the case. Eric Young and Sami Callihan and Ken Shamrock don't look to be as part of a faction, because the following week it was Callihan and Shamrock standing tall with Chris Bay instead. So it looks like there's just a third person, a revolving third person standing tall with Callihan and Shamrock every week during their feud with Rich Swann. So it doesn't look like Eric Young is going to be involved with those guys. Nevertheless, he needs something to do, because it would appear now that Eric Young's feud with Rich Swann is over. And to be honest, it makes sense that this feud with Rich Swann is over. Since Eric Young's return to Impact Wrestling, all he's done is feud with Rich Swann. Obviously, I say all he's done, I mean in a storyline point of view. Obviously, he's done a heck of a lot. He's attacked Rich Swann a million times. He's won the Impact World Championship. He's lost the Impact World Championship. He's been the best thing on the show. So by saying all he's done, I mean that's been his program. His feud has been with Rich Swann, and they've done everything at this point. What's more for there to do in that storyline? I said they've attacked each other a million times. Rich Swann has retired, come back. They've had the main event at Bound for Glory. Then they've had the follow-up match on the following episode of Impact, impromptu, but Rich Swann won. You look at it now, Rich Swann's got 2 victories over Eric Young. And prior to that, he actually defeated him at Slammiversary in that elimination match for the Impact World Championship. It's done. It's done. There's nothing more for them to do. So Eric Young, from a storyline point of view and from a character point of view, needs something else to do. He needs something else to do. And that, to me, you look at the lay of the land, a lot of people are still involved in programs right now. And even though, as I mentioned, it's the beginning of a new season after Bound for Glory, and we're already building to Bound for Glory next year, essentially. It's the road to Bound for Glory next year. Eric Young needs something to do now, and he can't just disappear. He can't just disappear, because Eric Young, as I mentioned, since he returned at Slammiversary, he's basically been the best thing on the show. He's been the best heel in the company. Some of his performances have been great. His mic work's been great. His character work has been superb. He has been the top. He has been the best. And just because he's lost the championship at Bound for Glory, just because he then lost a follow-up match, what's he meant to do, fall off the face of the earth? Of course not. Impact have just signed him to a long-term contract. He's exclusive to the company now. He's on a roll, but he needs to maintain it. He needs something to do. Step in Joe Doring. So it looks like Eric Young's going to have a stable going forward in Impact Wrestling right now. Now, as I mentioned, Joe Doring, I'll be totally honest, I don't know a ton about him. I really don't know a ton about him. I struggle to keep right up to date with the stuff that's going on in New Japan, let alone All Japan, so I really don't know a ton about Joe Doring. If you do, you can let me know in the comment section below. What I will say is Impact Wrestling needs bodies. They need bodies and they need talent. I've mentioned this in the video I did earlier today when I spoke about the title changes at Victory Road, but Impact Wrestling are hurting right now. They need talent. They really do need talent, and I know people will say, well, that's ironic considering all the talent that they signed back in July at Slammiversary, but Impact really does need bodies at the moment because you have to look at the status of the roster right now when it comes to several departures and several injuries. The Rascals are leaving. They're having their final match tomorrow night on Impact Wrestling. So they're leaving. That's 3 top guys gone. Top guys gone and a tag team and a main event guy, essentially. So they're gone. That's 3 guys out the door. You've got Heath, a big signing that you signed back in July. He's injured. Now, yes, he's appearing on Impact TV, but we don't know when he's going to be back in the ring. So he's injured. Alex Shelley, part of the Motor City Machine Guns, he's injured. He's got a neck injury at the moment. Looks like he's going to probably be back around January, February time next year. Nevertheless, he's injured. Obviously, we know the situation when it comes to Kylie Ray. She didn't show up at Bound for Glory. Obviously, she's got her issues going on right now, and hopefully she's getting the help she needs. She's retired. She's under contract of Impact, but she said she's retired, and I don't know if she'll come back. Personally, I don't know. I don't think she will. I really don't think she will. That's another body gone. You've got EC3. He had a short-term deal. Didn't really work any matches. Worked a match, if you want to call it that, against Moose at Bound for Glory. I don't consider it really to be a match. He cut some promos. He cut vignettes. He's already done more for Ring of Honor in a couple of weeks than he did for Impact Wrestling over about 3 or 4 months. But he's gone. That's another body that you don't have now. Obviously, a couple of months ago, we had RVD and Katie Forbes both leave. They're no longer with the company. And if you really want to stretch it back further than that, we recently, obviously, Daga officially got his release from the company. That was always coming, and he hadn't appeared for a while. Tessa Blanchard left prior to Slammiversary. And obviously, yes, with the Tessa Blanchard one and the Daga one, obviously Impact brought in talent at Slammiversary. But you can't facilitate injuries, and you can't see those things coming, but you have to be aware that they will. And when it comes to injuries and people leaving the company and contracts expiring, yes, Impact brought in talent earlier this year. They still need more. They still need more, especially when you look at all the recent injuries and departures that have taken place in the company, and it makes total sense for me to bring in someone like Joe Doring. And yes, I've seen people say, who the hell is that guy? Who's this guy? I don't know who he is. And a lot of people probably won't know who he is. Look, people, even the biggest wrestling fans are only wrestling fans of things that happen in North America or Europe. People don't really pay a lot of attention sometimes to the stuff that happens in Japan. If they do, it's New Japan. You have to be proper hardcore of hardcore to watch All Japan Pro Wrestling, just because there's so much wrestling to consume. It's not really sometimes on people's radar. So I've seen a lot of people be like, who the hell is that guy? I've admitted there, I don't know a ton about him. I think I vaguely remember him, but it doesn't really ring that much of a bell. I have seen, which is quite humorous, some people say that Joe Doring looks like a jacked up Kid Rock, which did make me laugh, but he's a big guy. He's got experience, obviously. He's got pedigree. You don't have that success in Japan without being a great worker and a great character worker, especially being a foreign guy in Japan. So, nevertheless, I think this is a good move. I think it's a good move purely on the sense that Impact needs talent, and Eric Young needs something to do to keep him going with the momentum that he's managed to build up over the year so far. And I think Impact does need more names. I think they really need to plug in some of the gaps that have been left by the injuries that we've seen so far, especially in the last couple of weeks, and the departures that look to be coming over the next couple of weeks as we head into the end of the year. And when it comes to an Eric Young faction, I'm very interested in that. It wouldn't be the first time EY's been a leader of a faction in Impact Wrestling. Obviously, he was the leader of World Elite. Do you remember that? That was back in 2009. Now, I'm not saying this faction is going to be as good or bad, depending on how you look at it, as World Elite. What I will say is I think EY being a leader of a faction is something he did in WWE with Sanity, and he did it very, very well. Now, this isn't going to be a Sanity ripoff. Is it just going to be him and Joe Doring? I don't know. The way they were describing it at Turning Point and the way they've been describing it on their website and on their social media channels, Impact is kind of implying there might be more names to come, which again would be a positive because I think Impact Wrestling needs bodies. They need people in the door at this point. And Eric Young still needs to be a featured player. You can't go from the main event of Bound for Glory, being a world champion, into just doing nothing, just floating in obscurity. From an Impact point of view, they've just signed him to a contract. They need to get their value for money when it comes to EY, and they will. But you need to give him stuff to do. You need to give him stuff to sink his teeth into. And Eric Young knows that he's only as relevant as his last match. He's only as big and bookable as his last match. So he needs to keep going, whether that is reinventing himself once again, whether that is evolving the character after this feud with Rich Swann. Whatever he needs to do, he'll do it. He knows you need to stay relevant. And I mentioned this in the title change video that I spoke about earlier today. I think that if it's just a tag team with Eric Young and Joe Doring, I think that could potentially lead into a feud with the Good Brothers. We know the Good Brothers are the new Impact World Champions. They were crowned at Turning Point this past weekend. That feud to me looks the most likely right now, and I really like the way that shapes up. You've got two big guys like Doc Gallows and Doring, similar size powerhouses. You've got the smaller, more technical guys like EY and Carl Anderson. I think that matches up really well. You've got good talkers in there with EY and obviously the Good Brothers. You've got two tag teams that haven't faced off before. You've got the background of both the Good Brothers from Japan and Doring from Japan. Different promotions in New Japan and All Japan, but they can weave in that as well. That's a lot of interesting story to tell there. And it's teams that haven't faced off before. I think considering that Eric Young and Doring took out the Dinas, who they themselves, of course, are a tag team, it looks to me like for now, unless we do get more bodies into this Eric Young stable, it looks like at the very least we've got an Eric Young, Joe Doring stable, tag team rather, going forward. So I think also you have to factor in that there is some uncertainty when it comes to the North as well. Ethan Page's future, we know that his contract's expiring at the end of the year. Is he going to sign? Is the North going to stay as the North, or is Josh Alexander, if Ethan Page leaves, is he going to become a singles? There's a lot of uncertainty in that tag team division. And you look at the lay of the land, who are the Good Brothers going to face right now? Tag teams are either busy, or they're injured, or they've got contracts expiring. So there's a lot of moving parts, or they're leaving. So there's a lot of moving parts there. So I could certainly see a Good Brothers versus Eric Young and Joe Doring feud happening in the future. And like I said, ultimately, Impact Wrestling, they need bodies and they need extra talent right now. Now, that wasn't the only major announcement that was revealed this past weekend at Turning Point. It was finally revealed the participants for the Impact Wrestling Knockouts Tag Team Championship Tournament. Now, at Impact Wrestling's Turning Point, commentators Josh Matthews and Madison Rayne revealed the participants for the upcoming Knockouts Tag Team Championship Tournament that starts tomorrow night on Impact Wrestling on Access TV. Now, what was really interesting about this announcement is that half of these names are already signed to Impact Wrestling, and they're going to take place in the tournament. Those names were Tanil Dashwood and Alicia Edwards, Havoc and Nevaeh, Kiera Hogan and Tasha Steelz, Kimberly and the now two-time Knockouts champion Deonna Purrazzo, and of course Taya Valkyrie and Rosemary. Now, it was also announced that Jordynne Grace and a partner that is yet to be announced will also be taking place in the tournament, but Impact for this tournament will be welcoming some new and former faces to Impact Wrestling specifically for this tournament. This will include the tag team of Killer Kelly and Renee Michelle, and the current Shimmer Tag Team Champions, Sea Stars, which is Ashley Vox and Delmi Exo. Now, this is really, really exciting. Now, obviously, as I mentioned, the tournament starts tomorrow. The final will take place at Hard to Kill in January. This will determine the new Knockouts Tag Team Champions. Of course, the Knockouts Tag Team Championships returning for the first time in, 7 years after they were retired back in 2012, 2013. So very, very exciting. I'm really excited about these teams, specifically the new ones. I like that we've got legitimate female tag teams like the Sea Stars in there and Deonna Purrazzo and Kimberly. Interesting who's going to be Jordynne Grace's tag team partner. We'll touch on that in a second. I think this Knockout Tag Team Championship tournament is going to really steal the show over the coming weeks in Impact Wrestling. At a time where there is still loads of criticism when it comes to AEW, especially from people like myself. Some people might bury their heads in the sand, but I truly believe that AEW Women's Division is just awful. Awful. And it's not the talent's fault at all. It's the booking. The booking and the way the AEW Women's Division is presented is fundamentally flawed, in my opinion. That goes all the way up to the very top in AEW. At a time where this criticism is still ongoing with AEW, you've got Impact Wrestling over here, that they're bringing back the Knockouts Tag Team Championship and they're having tournament matches every week, several of them, and they're having it culminate at the Hard to Kill pay-per-view. They're just showing how it's done when it comes to booking female wrestling. Obviously, like I said, I think WWE, for all of their faults, does a great job when it comes to booking women's wrestling. They do. I still do think they have their flaws there. You know, if you're a blonde bombshell, you're going to get more over because Vince McMahon's got an obsession with you. That's the case, unfortunately. But Impact Wrestling are right up there when it comes to women's wrestling because the Knockouts division, for them, is a cornerstone of the show. You have main event level matches, actual main event matches on pay-per-views and on television specials and on TV episodes of Impact. They just know how to do it. They know how to do it. They present it so well, and universally, everyone will say, if you polled 100 people, 100% of them would say that the Knockouts division is better than AEW. It is up there with WWE, and it's one of the best things about Impact Wrestling right now. It just is. It absolutely is. So what I am really excited about, as I mentioned, about the Knockouts Tag Team Championship Tournament, I'm really excited about the new talent coming in. New talent is great. You've just heard me for about 15 minutes at this point say how important new talent, bringing in fresh faces, bringing in those extra bodies is going to be for Impact Wrestling over the next couple of months, especially with departures, especially with injuries and absences. The new talent is great, and it adds an extra layer of excitement. Not only are you excited about this tournament to see who's going to be crowned the tag team champions, not only are you excited about the tag team championships returning, but you're also excited about seeing these new faces. I can't wait to see these new tag teams. I can't wait to see Renee Michelle. Obviously, she was briefly with WWE. I'm really excited about that. I can't wait to see the Sea Stars. That's exciting. I can't wait to see who's going to partner Jordynne Grace. Is that going to be a new face? All of this sort of stuff. I think there are so many stories in this tournament so far, which is so exciting. So exciting. As I mentioned, when it comes to AEW, they've got one storyline. Every cycle, it's one storyline. They've got about 4 or 5 different storylines in one tournament when it comes to the Knockouts here. It's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. It shows the Knockouts division is expanding. It's not just about one championship now, it's about several. It's a cornerstone of the company, of Impact Wrestling on Access TV. As I mentioned, it's one of the best women's division in the world, arguably the best. I think it's up there with WWE. And it makes sense to expand it. If something is working so well, like the Knockouts division, if something is working so well, it's drawing big ratings, it's drawing positive acclaim on social media and via the experts, the various websites and dirt sheets, it makes sense to expand it. It makes sense to expand it, and I'm excited to see Renee Michelle and Killer Kelly come in, and the Sea Stars coming in is great. As far as their participation in this tournament, obviously the question then will come, is this a full-time? Is this a one-off? Are they only competing in the tournament? We see this quite a lot with WWE. When it comes to tournaments that they do in like the likes of NXT, you have people come in and it's a one-off, or is it going to be a full-time deal? And sometimes they just come in, lose the first round match, and that's it. I don't know. I think the likes of the Sea Stars, considering they are the Shimmer Tag Team Champions, you would think it's probably a one-off. We'll wait and see, though. Considering they already are a tag team, maybe they'll win a couple of matches, but they won't win the Knockouts Tag Team Championships. As far as Renee Michelle, I could see her absolutely. Signing with Impact. Killer Kelly, I could absolutely see her sign with Impact full-time. As I mentioned, they need bodies. And if something is working well, expand it. And that's exactly what they're doing with the Knockouts division. Tanil Dashwood, this is really interesting because obviously she's teaming with Alicia Edwards in this tournament. Now, obviously, at Turning Point, Tanil Dashwood teamed with Jordynne Grace, but she abandoned her. Now, later on in the show, Jordynne Grace was furious at Tanil Dashwood for leaving her hanging in their tag team match, but Alicia Edwards then came in, who also had an unsuccessful attempt in teaming with Jordynne Grace recently on Impact, and shockingly, the ultimate babyface, Alicia Edwards, decided to side with Tanil Dashwood, and they've agreed to partner up and enter the Knockouts Tag Team Championship Tournament, which of course starts tomorrow. So, it does raise the question, who is Jordynne Grace's tag team partner going to be in this tournament going forward? It's a tough one. Because there is many ways you can look at this. Obviously, a way that you could look at it is that they bring back a former Knockouts Tag Team Champion. They bring back legends. They bring back people that previously held the gold. So you've got this nice transition of the old Knockouts Tag Team Championship and the new Knockouts Tag Team Championship. So who could that be realistically? I think it would probably come down to two names. One being Gail Kim. Of course, we know Gail Kim still works backstage and behind the scenes at Impact. She works a lot specifically with the Knockouts. I think she's, a two-time Knockouts Tag Team Champion, something like that. I don't think she will. She's been very vocal about being retired. I just can't see her breaking the retirement for the tournament. I mean, I could be wrong, but I just can't see her doing that. Plus, Gail Kim, she's not going to come back full-time, so if it's her, then they have to lose. Is Gail Kim going to come back to lose? I don't know. I think another one more likely could be Madison Rayne. Of course, Madison Rayne does the commentary on Impact Wrestling, doesn't do all the pay-per-view events. Sometimes it's Don Callis, which I would prefer. I'm just a big Don Callis mark when it comes to commentary. I think he's one of the best commentators in the world, especially colour. So I really do like his work. Madison Rayne, we have seen her get back in the ring on occasion. We saw her get back in the ring at Slammiversary in the Knockouts Gauntlet match. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that she could come back and partner Jordynne Grace. Of course, Jordynne Grace, I think, was on Locker Room Talk with Madison Rayne a few weeks ago, so that could tie in well there. And of course, Madison Rayne is a former Knockouts Tag Team Champion herself, so it's possible. It's possible that Madison Rayne could do it. Her in-ring days aren't over, and of course, Madison Rayne, what works for that is if they're going to just go out in the first round, Madison Rayne can take the pinfall and just go back to commentary. It doesn't matter. It doesn't hurt her at all, so that's certainly a possibility. Then, of course, I think you have to look in another situation, and in the title change video I did earlier today, I mentioned what's Su Yung going to do next. She's lost 2 matches in a row. She's lost the Knockouts Championship to Deonna Purrazzo. What's she going to do next? Maybe she partners Jordynne Grace. What an odd couple that would be. Su Yung and Jordynne Grace, that would be such a weird dynamic, but just such a strange dynamic that it could possibly work and bring them to the Knockouts Tag Team Championship. Perhaps, I questioned earlier today when I made that video, why did Su Yung drop the championship so soon after winning it at Bound for Glory? Maybe it's because she's going to become the Knockouts Tag Team Champion with Jordynne Grace. That's a possibility. Of course, you could look at Su Young's alter ego in Susie. Susie, it could be in the tag team division, while Su Yung is in the Knockouts Championship picture with Deonna Purrazzo. That's absolutely a possibility. And I think possibly if Su Yung teams up with Jordynne Grace, then they can eventually face off against maybe the likes of Deonna Purrazzo and Kimberly. That could be something to look at as well. I'm not sure how the draw would work with that one, but it's a possibility. There are certainly a lot of people that could come into Impact Wrestling. One such name, this is a bit of a something out of left field. What about Allison Kaye? We know Allison Kaye is a free agent. Her contract with the NWA has expired, and Allison Kaye in Impact Wrestling as Sienna is a former 2-time Knockouts champion, I believe. So it's not out of the realm of possibility she could return. And a lot of people are under the assumption Allison Kaye, she signed with AEW. She previously, of course, had ties with the NWA. Her contract has expired, but she's worked a couple of shows with AEW. It's a certainty. Is it really a certainty, though? As I mentioned, she's got ties in Impact. If you're looking at the lay of the land, where's the better women's division? Where's the place you're going to get more featured? Where's the place you're going to have better matches? It ain't in AEW. It's not in AEW. It's in Impact Wrestling. So if they could steal that deal out of under the nose of AEW, that would be unbelievable. That would be incredible. Now, before people say anything, of course, it's not going to be Zelena Vega. Of course, she's been released by WWE, but she's got a 90-day non-compete clause, so she can't appear in any pro wrestling company till about February time, so that's not happening. Maybe Maria Kanellis. Of course, we know she's a free agent. I think she's still involved with the NWA, but she's not signed anything, and she, of course, is a former Knockouts champion. We all talk about Mike Kanellis, or Mike Bennett. Where's Mike Bennett going to end up next? Maybe it's not a case of Mike Bennett coming to Impact Wrestling. Maybe it's a case of Maria Bennett coming to Impact Wrestling. Maybe that's the way they debut or return to the company. I think that would be a fascinating way for them to return to the company. Either way, I think the new championships look great. I think it's a brilliant bit of news that they're returning to the company, the tag team championships. I think it has been something that people have wanted to see for a long, long time. And the company and just women's wrestling and the Knockouts division in Impact Wrestling is on such a roll right now. The booking of that division is just absolutely fantastic. It's progressive. It's the next step in evolving that division by bringing back the tag team championships. And as I mentioned previously, they're looking to bring in more names, and I think that's going to be a feature for Impact going forward as we head into 2021. You need more names. You need more names, but it's something I'm very, very excited about. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on the surprise returns and announcements at Turning Point this past weekend? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I'll be sure to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys and chatting about Impact Wrestling here on the channel, so be sure to leave a comment below. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button. Really does help us out here on YouTube, go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.